Calculating slope from a graph. Remember our linear equation y equals mx plus b. Our slope, or the m value, is always going to be attached to our x variable. And slope is the same thing as just saying rise over run. Rise over run. The change in y over the change in x. That's what this means right here, these symbols. So let's look at these two graphs. And our first graph, we can tell, is increasing as we move from left to right. So we know our slope is going to be a positive slope. We know our slope is positive. But we also want to know exactly what that value is. So all we've got to do is pick 2 points that we see on this graph that cross our grid lines in the corners. So what do I mean by that? We need to find 2, quote, good points. Here is a point where our grid lines cross, and there's another one right here. So we have 2 good points that we can see in our graph, and we want to check the rise over the run. So I'm a creature of habit, and I usually start with the point on the left, and then I count up 1, 2, 3, 4. So because it's up 4, that's a positive 4. And then we count to the right, 1, 2, 3. Moving right is always also positive. So that's up 4, right 3. Therefore, our slope is a positive 4/3, or 4/3. Now, when we look at our next graph, we see that as we move from left to right, our graph is falling or decreasing or descending. So this graph has a slope that is negative. Our slope is negative. So we're going to do the same thing all over again. We're going to find 2 good points that cross our grid lines exactly. It looks like we have a y-intercept here that is a whole number. And we've got another point down here. So again, I always start with the point on the left, and we're going to count our rise over our run. And remember, rise is always in the y direction, and run is always in the x direction. Okay, so our rise is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps down. So because we were moving down, that's going to be a -5. And then we move to the right, 1, 2, 3. And because we move to the right, that's a positive 3. So for this next graph, our slope is going to equal -5/3. All right? Now, what are we going to do if we have some points or if we have a table of values? Well, slope is still going to be rise over run. It's still the change in y over the change in x, but we can also use this formula. And if you're in Texas and you have to take the Algebra 1 star test, this formula is provided for you on your Algebra 1 star chart, okay? So if I give you 2 points, the first thing that I want you to do is label those values. So I'll call my first point x1, y1. And I'll call my second point x2, y2. Now, it doesn't really matter which point you label 1 and which point you label 2, as long as if this first x value is labeled a 1, this y value also has to be labeled a 1. All right, so let's plug in our equation. Again, we're using this equation right here. It's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So our slope is going to equal y2, which is 18, minus y1, which is 15, over our x2 value, which is -10, minus our x1 value, which is a -5. So I want you to pay attention here that we have this double negative, right? We have minus a negative value. So I'm going to rewrite this just so it's a little easier to understand. Our numerator is still 18 minus 15, but our denominator is -10, and minus a negative, because they're the same sign, turns into a positive 5. Okay? And then 18 minus 15, that gives us 3. And then -10 plus 5, That gives us a negative 5. So our slope is 3 over negative 5. This is the same thing as saying a negative out in front, 3/5. Or you may have seen before, you can move that negative sign up to the numerator as long as your denominator turns positive. It doesn't matter where we have our negative. It can be written in our denominator, it can be written out in front, or it can be written in with our numerator, but only one negative value is allowed if your slope is negative. Let's try an example from our table. So if I have this table of values, all I need to do is choose 2 points. Any 2 points that I want, it does not matter. So if I just start with the top 2 points, we'll call this point x1 and this point y1. This point would be x2 and this point would be y2. And we'll just plug these values into our equation. So remember, our slope is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And when you're first learning slope, the more that you write this formula down, the more likely you are to remember it. So our y2 value is 0 minus our y1 value of 5 over our x2 value of negative 2, and then minus our x1 value of negative 4. Again, we have a double negative here, minus a negative 4. So I'm going to just go ahead and change these in the problem into one giant plus sign. So our numerator, 0 minus 5, gives us negative 5, and our denominator, negative 2 plus 4, gives us a positive 2. Therefore, our slope is negative 5 over 2. And those of you that are using a TI Nspire calculator, you can go ahead and type in the formula exactly like this, even with your double negatives, with your minus negative 4 in the denominator, and the calculator will go ahead and give you the reduced answer. Okay, so if you want to use your Nspire calculators, or if you've got some other form of calculator, maybe you're using a Desmos calculator, all of those will help you reduce your fraction if it can be reduced.